Exclusive.
Hey guys, it's Matt Pais. I'm sitting here with Alfonso Gomez-Rejon.
And I directed Me and Earl and Dying Girl, and it premieres on June 12th.
So you and Greg are co-workers?
Nah, we friends. He just hate calling people his friend. Dude's got issues.
Yeah, he does. What's going on?
Man, I don't even know. It might be his folks. I mean, dude's mom always tell him how handsome he is, which he ain't. So now he think he can't trust anybody close to him. Dude's weird-ass dad don't socialize with anybody except the cat. So that's a role model, ain't got no friends. Bottom line, dude's terrified of calling somebody his friend, and they saying, hey, bro, I'm not your friend. Then he have to kill himself.
Well, I was lucky enough to be at Sundance for the premiere of the movie,
That was
and
something.
it blew my mind. I mean, it was one of the most memorable movie-going experiences I think I've ever
Mine
had.
too. It was surreal.
Because it was, what, like 1,200, 1,500 people, like, laughing and crying in unison. What was going through your head? Were you in the theater for the entire
Of course,
film?
yeah. That was the first time. It was a very surreal experience because physically my body just gave out trying to finish the film in New York. I was at urgent care with a fever. I hadn't been this sick in I don't know how long because I just trying to finish the movie and racing, and we're having some technical issues and we can never get. And then we finally I think it was a Thursday at 7 a.m. that I saw the final version of the movie before it was shipped to Sundance because they needed to QC it as well. Mm-hmm. And we were premiering that Sunday, and with all the flaws, I just had to this is it, and it was really disappointing because I was so critical of the whole film, and I only see the flaws. You know, it's really hard as a director to let go of something, and all of a sudden you're letting it go, and revealing it in front of 1,400 people in the most public venues. You know, so sick. I didn't have a voice. And then I was so nervous hadn't slept in 3.5 days, and I was so nervous to just introduce the film. You know, it just so much was the lead up to it, and then I was surrounded by family, my friends from Laredo, Texas that I've known since birth. You know, all flew in, and then 1,400 people and a lot of the crew, and then you just kind of start to let go, and then it was started to catch. You were there. I mean, people were laughing, people going. My producer tapped me on the shoulder. He was behind me. He's like, we didn't know. We had the last screening we had for friends and family was in early October for 40 or 30 people or something in New York, and then all of a sudden cut to no one's seen it until January, late January, and then it gets that kind of response was just overwhelming.
I thought you were going to say that your body gave out during the movie. Like, as
No.
it was happening.
That night, it was because I'd been going almost at that point 4 days with no sleep. Both insomnia, which I suffer from that, but two, the anxiety of finishing the movie, and then the nerves of revealing it, exhibiting it. And then I just started to let go and enjoy it, and then I actually got quite emotional during the movie towards the end. And it was the first time it screened with my dad's dedication. It was the first time. So that was also something very private becoming very public. But that response, that ovation was none of us. And it's on behalf of the entire crew. Unexpected, but it felt great because everyone's work was being appreciated.
Did you sleep like 20 hours the next night?
And it was funny because the reason I didn't, not until like another night after that, because the phone was like ding, 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 ding. Everybody was emailing, everybody was texting. I was afraid to turn my phone off. But I was just reading, and the first reviews were coming out, and I just couldn't believe this was happening because I've been on the other end of that, and it isn't pleasant, you know.
How inclined are you to cry in movies normally?
It depends, man. It depends on what emotional state I'm in that day. But sometimes I cry at things I don't even expect. When I saw The Tales of Hoffman, I hadn't cried in a movie until I saw the re-release of The Tales of Hoffman at the restoration. The restored print at the New York Film Festival, and Thelma Schoonmaker took me, and you know, Earl watches that movie in our movie, and then seeing that there was a moment of just pure cinematic, just absolute beauty that all of a sudden I found myself with tears coming down my face, and it'd been a while, but I do enjoy to go there if it's earned, but you know it, you feel it or you don't, but I don't cry at what is that saying? Drop of a hat, but ESL, sorry.
Will you say that, you know, as a director, you only see the flaws? A lot of actors talk about, like, they can't watch their own stuff. They hate seeing it.
Right.
How much do you feel that way, like, now after having made a couple movies, seeing each one a few times, I'm sure? Are you still only seeing the flaws, or?
It's hard, yeah. I get very tense. There's moments when I look away because I have to accept that this is this is the best that I could have done, the best job I.
Can you note something that comes to
No,
mind?
because then that's all you'll see. But it's just, I'll give you what happened, what I was able to change from Sundance, and then I could be. But it was one of those things. At some point, it's the process of letting go is so hard that at some points you just have to say to yourself, "This is the best I could have done at this point in my life, under these conditions, under these circumstances," and then it just has to go off, and you have to move on. But it's hard. I understand why some directors don't do director's cuts or re-edit their films. Scorsese doesn't, because that is what he made at that time. You know, that was the person I was. So there are certain things I wish I could fix, but we ran out of money. We're a little movie, and now it has to go out, and it's working emotionally. So sometimes you don't want to change too much because I'm superstitious as well. But I'll give you one little example that killed me at Sundance. There's very little visual effect worked in the film. Only one shot I felt we didn't have a lot of it. We had like one big extra day. So all those big days where you see all these people, that was the day we can afford 300 extras or 350 extras, the greatest extras in film. Just a really good group of people. There's a shot when we transition to high school at the very beginning of the movie that tilts down with the bus, and it says my first day of high school, my first day of senior year, and we tilt down, and we had about 10 people, 10 extras. So I wanted to add people so it felt a little more crowded, because when you go inside, we have, so it's so intense and crowded, and that's all real people, obviously. But the very, very wide shot outside of the high school that tilts down, and you see the steps and the columns of that wonderful Shinley High School. There weren't a lot of people, so I wanted to add people. So we went back to other takes and did some crowd duplication. Not a lot. I think total we added 20 more people. Otherwise, it starts to look fake. But we accidentally cut in, because we're so tired, cut in the wrong version of that shot for Sundance, and I couldn't change it anymore. So that was like, if we don't sell this movie, there's a chance that we won't. You don't know, yeah? This is the version that's going out in the world. And literally people evaporate during the shot. There's a guy in a bicycle, and he just kind of evaporates. It was an early version of the couple. They were so similar. So I'm watching this, and I'm like, dying. It's like,
you're like, this is the shot that will mean it won't get sold.
Or
this
people didn't notice it. It's like, what's going on? But no one noticed it. Because, of course, you're watching it without the volume when you're doing the DI. So all you're seeing are all the technical imperfections. You don't have the music and the audio to kind of carry into the story. So every little camera shake of this is like, well, there it is.
Seems so obvious to you. How would anyone else not see it?
And then
right?
sometimes there's shaking. You try to stabilize, and you realize it's becoming too clean, and then just leave it the way it was. It had life in it, and let's move on. But things like that are things I was able to the very little things I was able to go back and tweak. And there was one sound thing that I tweaked 5 times until it literally ripped the movie, like pulled me out of the sound mix, which was the volume, Scorsese's volume in the Taxi Driver commentary. It was too soft, and it was too loud, and it was too soft, and now it's, I think, just right, and that's out in the world. Sorry. You go nuts, the details.
Well, you talked about how much you guys really worked to make sure that all the dialogue felt authentic, like things that these characters would really say.
Yeah.
What comes to mind when you think about what you were trying to avoid in those situations? I'm sure you've seen movies or TV shows. They're just like, this doesn't seem real at all.
Yeah. What was I trying to avoid, just specifically with the high school experience of the side of the film, or in
I mean,
general?
if there's anything specifically that you can point to that felt fake to you, or how you know the difference of something that's authentic.
Well, you feel it, and you feel it too. I mean, anyone feels it, and you see a movie, and people are too clever or too cynical and ironic, and it's people that it's like the cliche version of a jock, like the 6-foot white guy with a jersey or whatever, the alphabet. What do you call this thing?
The bully is always the same in everything.
There's that thing that I only know from other movies, but have never lived it, and so the casting of it, because there was Jock City and there was the Stoners and all that kind of. The idea was to try to find a way in that felt real, and so that makes sense. So there was a lot of thought that went into who every background actor, every extra. I hate saying extra because I find it that they will find it offensive because they're background actors and they're as important as Thomas Mann, the guy in the background, is. What he's wearing, how he's moving. We have one guy, and if you shoot something in New York City, you have one person pointing at the Statue of Liberty, the film is dead. All these little details matter. So it's in the background casting and what they're wearing, making it real, and so then Thomas, of course, in the casting of everybody in the film, it's that naturalism. They feel authentic, they feel real. If the actors in Nick Offerman is slightly more eccentric, but there's that wonderful close-up of his towards the end of the movie when he says that Earl came by and do you want some andouille sausage? That scene, his close-up is quite powerful. You see a concern there as a dad. So you have actors that could kind of go back and balance that very fragile. God, what's that word? You know, that fine line between comedy and drama. They were able to balance it so effortlessly, seemingly to us, and make the movie feel real. Because if it goes, it could be sentimental very quickly. It could be too broad too easily. We have one or two pratfalls, but they're earned, hopefully. So it was that I wanted to find an experience that was authentic to me, to what I was feeling. I identified with Greg, so you want everything to have a texture, you know, a patina to it that you felt was real, and it all comes down to the casting of the background actors, the texture of the high school, because it's so easy to make it look familiar to you. And when I was reading the script, I was like, oh God, I really like it. How do I shoot a guy walking down a hallway in a high school? I've done it on Glee 1,000 times. I've seen it in 1,000 movies. How do you make it fresh? Like, what is my approach? What is the composition? And then when you walk into Shenley High School, then you really see, okay, now it's a prison. It's an institution. They'll take advantage of these 22-foot ceilings and really make it look into like a monster and light it with fluorescence, you know? So all that adds up to making something you want to feel fresh to yourself.
Part of what I love about the movie, and I love a lot about it, is the way that it focuses on the point of view of Greg and then blossoms out from there, from the title to just the way the whole movie unfolds. You say you related to him. I know you made the movie, partly to deal with your own loss.
Yeah.
When you experience the movie, do you experience it through his eyes? Was he the only, like, do you relate to anyone else in the movie, or is it kind of you through him?
Primarily through Greg. You know, that was my way in because he's going through those emotions. But I love all the characters. I genuinely, and I think you have to go into it loving and not, you know, even if you're making a movie about someone that's unsympathetic in the traditional way, you have to not judge anybody. So you have to love them for who they are. So I do genuinely love all the roles, all the characters in the movie very much. But of course with Greg, I found a connection to it. So it's hard not to say, you know, it was very hard. I was very tough on Thomas in the audition process for a reason. You wanted to know, okay, is this the guy I'm going to invest and throw myself in and take this journey with?
What do you mean when you say tough?
He came back over and over and over again, auditioned with more and more pieces. There was a big monologue that is not in the movie. Came back over and over for that. I just wanted to. This film was very, very important to me. And so once we knew the chemistry it was right with him and Olivia, then you knew that he was right for it. But because I was going to be very tough, because it wasn't just, no one could phone this job in. I had to feel that person was invested 100% into it, and it was able to balance the humor and the drama so effortlessly. So he of course was my way in, but thematically that emotion that they're all going through from the parents, which is the guilt, you know, even Connie's like, she started this, you know, and you feel her guilt somewhere towards the end of the movie because she propelled his son into having to live through these emotions that are so abstract even when you're an adult. But they're all dealing with a potential loss and the abstract idea that perhaps one person could be here and then not here tomorrow, which is so weird, you know? And so that emotion that I was feeling and that you feel with Earl when he gets in the fight with Thomas, you feel that anger, you feel that confusion, you feel Thomas trying to understand this and remaining such a child until the very end. Just look at the way he's crawling on the floor at the beginning of the movie and how he's walking off at the end. There's something a physicality that actually even Thomas took on that made him feel older. So that emotion that they were all going through and trying to understand from the parents to the kids, I think was very honest. So, and I think I could relate to all of them at different stages.
A lot of people have commented online that you don't look unlike Javier Bardem and maybe Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
The bloated brother in the basement version of him.
Well, how many times in your life has someone come up to you thinking that you were him
I get it
else?
I get it almost every day in a really weird way. But one time I was in an elevator at a hotel in LA, and there was a German tourist, and they started looking at me, and then they said the name, and then I had a baseball cap on, which I don't usually wear. I found them quite annoying, but for some reason I had it. And I just lowered it to pretend that and then I walked away. It was a beautiful moment. But one time in Bali, I was directing second unit on Eat, Pray, Love, and he was the star of that movie, and he had just come from working on Iñárritu's Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm a friend of his because I used to be his assistant in second
Right.
unitary. So they had told him about me, and they have told me about him. So when we saw each other, he said, and we took a picture. He said, we do look alike. We both have cow eyes. And we do both have...
Do you have that on your phone still?
I know, I know my mom has some. But we do really have, like, these cow eyes. And that was the best version of that. That was the best word. But there are worse things to be compared to them. But if you look at us together, you see how the lesser version of that is me. I lose both in every aspect, both in talent and looks and size. But thank you, I guess.
So you didn't try to impersonate him for one take of
I
that
didn't
movie?
impersonate. No, it's impossible. No, the story was that he had left the scene and I was coming in to do second unit at that same place, and then they just assumed that I was him, and it became like a little scene, which was very funny.